So the first thing we have on our agenda tonight is our VSBA policy revisions. And that will be Dr. Nichols.
Yes, so tonight I'm bringing forward a first read of VSBA's spring collection of policy revisions. Want to make note, so we have the summary page for you. Most of them are just minor edits, grammatical edits, changing pronouns, just really minor shifts. So the family medical leave one, VSBA wanted to point out footnote 5. So this is GCBE regarding employees returning from FMLA restored to equivalent position and collective bargaining. So collective bargaining is not part of what we do in New Kent at this point in time. In May, it does become an option that localities can choose to engage in. So we're just keeping an eye on the language around that. GCPA, reduction in professional staff workforce. Our policy is different from VSBA's, so we'll be bringing you a recommendation on that. JGD, VSBA is recommending we delete the reg. I really don't think we should do that. So that would be one that I would go against because the reg content isn't in our policy. So without, and it's weird, VSBA doesn't typically get into the regs. It's more about how you localize it. But this one, they were making a recommendation to delete the reg. I just wouldn't include that. We can have the policy shift, but the reg would stay in place because that actually shows us, how we would enact that. Go ahead.
Which is the?
JGD and then JGER.
On the second, on the summary page.
Yes.
It's easier to find.
Yeah, on the summary page, it says regulation deleted. We would not delete the regulation. Outside of that, it's minor grammatical edits and cross references are updated for most of those. So this is a first read. So as you do work through the summary sheet, which is where I always jump to if you have any questions between now and the second read, where we would approve, just let me know and I can provide more information on the one that I just highlighted.
All right, any other questions about that, board members?
Not at this time.
No. Construction update. Mr. Powell.
How are y'all doing?
Good.
Very good.
Good. Right now, well, everybody knows what we're doing right now. We just started our site work up there. We spent a few days in the mud to start with, but it's moving along well now. We are to pay app 2. We have at this time no change orders. We do have some issues that we are addressing, but that will be done in the next meeting. I see y'all later.
So we wanted to bring a construction update each work session, knowing that some of these would not have much to them, but just an effort of transparency, keeping the board informed outside of our biweekly construction meetings. And we will start our monthly construction meetings end of May. So working on that piece too. This project will generate a lot of conversation. We want to make sure that you're up to date on the work that's being done.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business, we have the proposed budget update. Dr. Nichols has more on.
All right, and we just talked about budget on Friday at our joint meeting, so not a lot has changed, but we do want to bring you up to date. We want to bring you up to date on a few. Keep stalling for Ross.
No pressure.
All right. All right, so summary of all our funds. This slide that we're used to seeing. This slide is now reflects the additional $632,085 that we received in additional money adopted by the special session. This is the number I referenced in our joint meeting, but wanted to see that added to the general fund. So now you see the general fund is up 5.7%. That is connected to all the money that we have received at this point in time. So we'll talk about how we're going to utilize that and salary in just a moment. So general general fund revenue slide. See, the state revenue is now up 4.8%. County revenue up 7%, that $1,002,000. Remember, that is representative of $450,000 request to the county and then $552,000 in new operating dollars. So that's where we get that money. The county has asked for that to be in two separate pots. So combined, it equals $1 million, but it's really looking at those two pieces. State revenue, we have potential funding for a Virginia Preschool Initiative expansion of $136,000. That is dependent on getting enough kids that qualify for the Virginia Preschool Initiative. So if we don't get enough kids, we don't get that money. So that's how that part works. And then our updated state revenue is $788,678. Some of that connected to sales tax, another amount connected to compensation or the potential of a 5% raise, which we'll get into. That'll get a little muddy, not to use Tim's construction example, but get a little muddy here in a second. We are requesting the 3.1 increase from the county, 3.1%, which is $450,000. In the county's proposed budget, the initial one they did last Monday, they had $150,000 for schools. So we're short of what we would need. I'm going to tell you why that creates a bigger problem in just a minute. We'll continue to work with the county. We did have the joint meeting on Friday. Mr. Hathaway and I meet again on Wednesday and kind of work through those pieces as well. Operating expenses for the new elementary school equals $2,045,000. We've requested $552,000. That leaves almost $1.5 million remaining in that fund. It would be lovely to be able to take some of that and offset the $300,000 that we're short, but we can't do that because it's operating money and that is for the new school specific, and we will need all of that when the new school comes online. So we have to be careful about these different pockets of money that we have in place. So updated salary adjustment, we received $632,000 for additional state revenue. In our initial presentation to you, we had a 2% salary increase. So to go from 2 to 3% is another $241,677. In our original presentation, we had to offset that as well to get to 2% with $20,354. So we're really basically doing a math problem here. We have $632,000 minus what we need to get to 3%. We would have $370,054. Now, a 1% increase, this is a 1% increase is $241,677.
So we could get, what you're saying is instead of getting from 2% to 3%, we could get to 4%?
There are lots of different ways that we could get to 4%.
Making sure I'm here and everything's
I was
right.
trying to check the math on that too.
You're good. Now, the language coming out of the General Assembly says that we have to give at least an average of 5% for standards of quality funded positions. Okay.
So,
Is that the next?
one more clarification.
Yep.
The salary adjustment, is that for all team members, all
Yes.
All teachers
personnel?
and staff.
Yes.
Okay,
Our goal is to get to at least 3% for all staff
right,
and really work into the teacher
the teachers.
side of things. That's our goal.
I can't remember a meeting when we haven't talked about a teacher leaving the profession.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And the competition is getting even
yes.
tougher.
Right.
Right.
Back up one. So with that 370, the General Assembly has said that, that is the next slide. Is that what you were giving me to the next slide? Thanks, Henry.
You're welcome.
All right, next slide, please. So the available balance that we have, and we're using that term balance, could be utilized to fund additional increases for some categories if we can get to an average of 5% for SOQ funded positions. Those are instructional positions, yes.
Okay, so SOQ is defined as strictly instructional
Yes,
positions.
it's teachers, principals, assistant principals, instructional assistants, social work.
Counselors,
What's that?
library counselors.
Counselors, yes.
Okay,
So if we don't get to that 5%, we don't get all of that money. That's the important part. So if we get to 3%, we're going to lose most of what you see as our balance.
Yeah.
So I would hate for us not to be able to maximize state funds,
Right.
but we're going to need some additional support to get there.
From the county.
Yes.
Mhm.
So continue work with the county to close that funding gap. We do have an unknown in this, and that's our healthcare renewal, which hopefully by the time we come back to you in April, we'll have. We budgeted for a 5% increase for healthcare. The county right now is coming in at 3.5. We would love that, but we're being told to brace for a 5%. So we can close this gap through all of these avenues, continue work with the county, but also additional review of our current staffing and our position requests. So we do have new position requests for next year that we may need to look at again in order to close that funding gap.
Now, in the past, the timing has been really important with this so that we could get contracts out early and all of that. Are we able to move that timeline forward so that we don't have those problems that we've had in the past?
And I'll defer to Haney and Cynthia, but I'll add this piece. We're really dependent on the county to adopt their budget because we're a subset of that budget to be able to move forward and feel comfortable moving forward with what that contract would be. I think that is the limiting factor. I don't know if either of you want to.
Typically, we have waited until the county adopted their budget, but there has been, I was actually asking Cynthia earlier today, if we could get some type of,
Instructional positions, SOQ positions,
Right.
something, can we do?
right.
Yeah, if we
Something
could
else
just secure
else.
the teaching ones.
Mhm.
Again, we don't want to get out too far and then
Have to back.
not be funded, but I do know that we went into a year with critical shortages prior to COVID, and I think that it will be a difficult hiring year. And so anyone that we can retain, and they, the more that they are aware that they have that position and the salaries expectation, we're pretty close to where we think Luann will help. It's just, we just don't want other counties
Right.
talking to them soon, sooner than we'd like.
Is
I'd like
there,
to see the
when,
retention high.
when you talk about this 241,677, can you tell me how much of that 1% is SOQ positions and how much of that how much of that 241 is non-SOQ positions? So is it a 75-25, like 75% of it is?
Actually, a little less than that.
Yeah, it's about 70% dollar wise.
Yeah. So 67% of our staff is SOQ funded,
Now,
So
but it's 70% of that dollar amount.
it's probably less if you just look at the positions that are actually funded through the SOQ, because, for example, we would have more instructional assistants that are actually or what is funded. So when we say 70%, we're looking at all staff that fit into those categories that Dr. Nichols read off, if that makes sense. So anyone that would be a teacher, a counselor, a librarian, an instructional assistant would fall into that percentage.
So I'm showing 161,000 would be what it would take to take SOQ positions only up 1%, if that's 67%, right?
Right, and what our goal is to try to do at least the 5% for those groups, but then more push in like we have in the past, where we've taken a couple $100,000 and really pushed into the teacher scale to help with compression and things of that nature also. So that's kind of what we're looking at and calculating to see, could we do something like that to get us even past the 5%?
162,000, we could get 2% more on the SOQ positions.
So if we
What I'm reading.
If we can get 450, which is our current request, the closer we get to that, the more we'll be able to pull off 3 across the board and an average of 5
Right.
in that piece.
SOQ.
We'll have to make about 90,000 in some cuts on our side, but we would be able to close that gap there. So the closer we get to that number, the better off we can be to make that happen. So that's what we're going to push forward. But we wanted to kind of explain that nuance to you guys because it is different than the way we typically line up. You typically get the money or it's at a 2%, which is fairly easy, but to get to that 5%, we're going to need some help.
Well, and I guess my concern is there's a big difference between 450 and 150. So do we really believe that we can close that gap? I mean, do you think that the county is gonna realize that how much we really need it?
Well, I think it's definitely something that has come out since their budget was put together. I mean, this is all late breaking for all of us, so I think
Right.
it's definitely something that everybody will need to consider as well. I'm sure they'll have on their end similar types of positions that they're gonna strive to, meet these guidelines. And I think we would all hate to see that money left on the table. And I think it's something definitely that we can talk through and work together to try to get to where we need to be.
We tried to reinforce that point at the joint retreat of not losing the state money that we would receive, and here's how we would go about accessing it.
Yeah.
So, and to stay competitive, or even just to stay even, I mean,
Right.
we've got to move in that direction, which is why, why are we doing 3 and then pushing in 5 and more? That's
Well,
so
I mean,
that we can be more.
5 to me is the minimum, because we're talking about all these surrounding counties and localities that are going 7, 10. I think I heard somebody saying 11% for one school division that's giving raises.
Yeah, Henrico and Chesterfield have partnered county school, city school to make a significant increase across, fire, sheriff, teacher. So yeah, those are the 2 big ones right now.
So that makes our county competition with those counties
Yes.
much more significant across the board. So it's not just our teachers, but it's also the fire and other.
And I think fire and sheriff would share that. That when you don't have a deep pool and we're all going after the same
Yeah.
candidates and schools are not producing more, it gets tough.
Any other questions, comments about the budget update?
And then we have, so back to your question, Ms.
Yeah.
Dasko, school board approves their budget May 3rd. So that's, and then adoption is pending the Board of Supervisors adoptions. Typically, we meet the following day and adopt it and with contracts in mind.
But is that May date far enough in advance of contracts? I guess my concern is in the past, we wanted to get contracts out sooner and we haven't been able to. Is there any way we can do that with at least the SOQ funded positions?
If we feel good about the money and where we are, the worst thing would be to give a set of contracts and then have to go back and then redo all of those contracts again if it changed. That would be difficult.
I think the more firm we are in that the money is secure and that we have that agreement, I think the more we can go out on that ledge. Just would hate to be out there and not be able to come through with it.
We have done, we have had similar timelines in the past. I know we always try to get them out before Memorial Day. And I think the extra step this year is a tax hearing. So you have to have a separate hearing for that with the county. So multiple hearings kind of push that date forward. I mean, but we can certainly talk to Mr. Hathaway and see if there's any wiggle room there. But I know they were really trying to get it adopted as soon as possible.
And we can be ready as soon as we know to get them out. If it feels like we're right at that area and we know what those scales will look like, we can do some back work to be as quick as possible, extending those contracts and trying to retain our employees.
Okay.
So our budget page will be updated with all of our budget information. So we'll be ready for the public hearing on April 12th.
Sounds like we're doing everything we can do. Okay, moving on to recommended elementary school redistricting plan.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, last month we heard from Matt Cropper and a pretty extensive overview of the process.
Definitely comprehensive.
And I'm happy to go through any of that you would like to see again or answer any questions you have, but that is up for second reading tonight and for approval.
Does it make sense to project the map that we're
approving or
Approving.
voting on, yeah,
Yep.
the
Yeah, we
options.
can do that. So. We go.
So basically, the two areas, we had two areas that changed slightly.
Yeah,
Of course, well, Oakmont, it wasn't a slight change, but it keeps Oakmont in New Kent Elementary School.
Oakmont and New Kent Elementary stay together in New Kent. The other
Mhm.
alteration was on the other side where, with
Airport Road.
Airport Road.
Yeah.
To have both sides of Airport Road stay with George Watkins from, and we received that feedback from residents, but also from transportation and
Okay.
efficiency. It makes sense to go down one side and pick up both versus splitting it.
So the residents are on board with that change.
Yeah, that's actually what, we were using Airport Road as a boundary road. And it was the feedback that we received through the survey that said, hey, can you take another look at that? When we did, it was 9 families, and it really did make sense to do both of these. And this is well over a year's worth of work getting to this point. So don't want to understate the involvement of a tremendous redistricting committee, the uncertainties that COVID brought and having to shift to online forums. But we're excited about the future and the building space utilization, long-term.
All right.
So pending board approval, we would communicate this to families. This would not be until the 22 school year when the new school opened. So we'd still have a lot of time to work through this with families. The planning principal would also be on board and can work with the new district, the Quinton Elementary School district.
We vote on this evening.
Yeah.
This is an action item.
Action, one or B.
Any other questions, comments? All right, so move on to action items. Do I hear a motion to approve the personnel matters as presented?
I move we approve the personnel, superintendent's recommendations on personnel matters as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
I
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next action item is consider approval of recommended elementary school redistricting plan as presented.
I move that we approve the recommended elementary school redistricting plan as presented.
And do I hear a second?
A second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And with that, we are adjourned. I don't believe that we have anything else on our agenda for this evening. That was a short meeting.